All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Jamie Hartman, and I am excited to be sharing with you the weekly Q&A, our first weekly question and answer session. It's January 24th, 2020, and if you're watching this after the fact, please feel free to contact me if you have any questions. I mean for these to be a conversation, not just me talking, although that's probably what you'll get most of for these. So first of all, really quick disclaimer. Again, as I said, I'm Jamie Hartman, and I am a functional nutritional therapy practitioner, but I do not diagnose or treat any disease. And the information that is presented here is truly for information only. You should not use it as a substitute for medical advice. Always consult with your medical provider before making any changes to diet, supplement, medication, or exercise programs, as I think you all probably know. So we're going to go on to our questions. The first question comes from Shelly, and Shelly had a great question about getting some advice about going out to eat dinner. She said, I am struggling with my friends. They're wanting to go out to dinner a lot. I don't mind ordering a salad. I check the menu before we go, and I will take my own salad dressing, but do you have any other advice for that? And absolutely I do. So first of all, Shelly, great job with a few points already. So you already recognize that you're not going to get to have whatever you want. So you're already okay with saying, I don't mind just ordering a salad. I know to check the menu before we go, and I'm okay bringing something with me. So these are all really good points. These are the first things I would tell anybody. So great job already. A couple things I'll add here. One is that I don't know about you, but if I just order a salad and it's a plain salad without a whole lot on it, I'm probably going to leave the meal still feeling hungry. So one thing I suggest is that in addition to bringing your own salad dressing, you might also want to bring, some of your own protein. So one thing that I know a couple of my clients have found they really like is they make the chicken poppers that come from Michelle Hoover. She's the blog Unbound Wellness that come from her blog. And so they're a combination of ground chicken and sweet potatoes, and they're really, really yummy. They make them ahead of time, obviously. So they're cooked, and then they eat them like room temperature or cold. They put them in a little baggie, stash them in their purse. And then when they get ready to pull out their salad dressing, pull that out too. And that way it feels like a little bit more substantial. And restaurants don't mind. If you're already buying something and you're going to leave a tip and all of that, they're usually fine with you pulling out something extra to go with it without even blinking. Checking the menu ahead of time is also really helpful, so you have an idea of what you're looking for. And then when you get there and you want to talk with the wait staff about how to make things work for you, my number one tip for everyone here is to really try to simplify your directions or your requests. So we don't ever really expect our wait staff to know what AIP is, and we don't want to have anything get lost in the shuffle by giving them a list of 100 different things we can't eat. So if you've already checked the menu before you go and you've already got an idea of what might work for you, that's important. And then give your directions to them or your questions in a really simple form. So I start with the big things, the things I know they'll recognize. I'm not going to have to do any more explanation for. So I say something like, I have some dietary needs, and everything I eat needs to be at a minimum gluten-free and dairy-free, because that will help them right away know that, like, this is serious. She knows what she's talking about, and know what is completely out of bounds on their menu. Then I say to them, I have some additional restrictions as well. So I'm hoping what you can do is give me something that is very plain and simple. So I'm looking at this particular item here. It looks like it sounds like it would work for me. Can you make this plain without any seasonings? And that's important because sometimes you might see on a menu like grilled chicken breast and think, well, that will probably work for me. Or baked salmon, that should work. But if it's been pre-marinated or pre-seasoned, then it would not work for them, for you. So you want to ask them if you can get it plain, no seasoning at all. And if they say yes, then you can just go from there, adding on to it. Can you cook it in a separate pan? Can you cook it without any oil? I really do need it very plain. That kind of bothers them sometimes because they want it to be really tasty, but you say, that's fine. I'll just put a little salt here on the table. I think that that's usually the best approach, is to ask for it as simple as you can get. The other tip I give people when eating out is that you want to be prepared to maybe not eat much of anything. And so prepare for that by eating ahead of time. So just in case you get there and everything kind of falls apart and none of your plans work and they can't come up with anything, you don't want to be sitting there ravenous and then maybe make a decision you shouldn't and decide to take a chance on something because you're just so hungry. So come prepared to maybe not have much to eat. Eat something before so you're not very hungry. And then be okay with saying something like, very pleasantly saying something like, if you can't accommodate my needs, that is perfectly fine. I am fine sitting here and enjoying a cup of tea and keeping company with my friends while they eat. Having this very small salad is fine with me. You really want to telegraph and send the message to the waitstaff that you are not trying to be a burden, but that you have some very clear needs. You're not just going to eat something to be polite. You are the customer, and it's okay to say, no, I can't eat that, and to make yourself very clear. So in addition to the things you've said here, I think that you are off to a really good start. And the only things I would add are just, making sure that one, you're not going to leave hungry, so eating ahead of time or bringing something with you. And then two, really having a very simple way of explaining what you need. And it gets a lot easier. Over time, this has gotten so much easier. I remember when I was in the elimination phase and I was working at a job where I had clients, prospects. I was in sales. I had to take people out to lunch, and I really didn't want to sit at the table in front of my prospective customers and monopolize the ordering by going over everything that I couldn't eat. And I have found that over the years that this gets easier and easier, in part because there's so much more awareness of food needs and food restrictions that it isn't that weird anymore to have a particular set of needs as it was even just a few years ago. And if you can clearly explain yourself, people generally really respect that. And you'll find that a lot of other people you're eating with will also have their own needs. That just brings to mind on that, before I go to the next question, one little thought, when I was taking people out and I wanted to make sure that the focus wasn't on me and my dietary needs, because again, trying to, do a business deal here. One of the little tricks that I learned was that we would all get seated. So it'd be like a big, imagine a dinner lunch, or a business lunch, we're all seated. The wait staff would take our drink orders. And then right after they took the drink orders, I would get up and excuse myself and follow the waiter out and then talk to the waiter away from the table. So that again, I didn't have to call attention to myself in front of these business folks that I was working with. And I would say something to the waiter like, okay, first of all, I'm taking these people out, and so make sure I get the check because this is, my business and I'm taking care of that. And second, when it comes time for me to order, I have some dietary needs and I want to make sure that it's okay and the kitchen's going to be able to handle this before I place my order. That way, when it got to me, I would be able to very quickly order what I wanted, say, like we said, something really simple, and not call a lot of attention to myself or take a lot of time ordering when I really wanted the focus to be on my clients. So that's a scenario where it's different than what you asked about, because you're talking about going out with your friends who we would hope understand what you're doing and are supportive. I'm talking about a situation where I'm with people I don't really know, and I don't really want to go into my health history or explain why I'm eating the way I am. So I found that the wait staff usually really wanted to help me, and I would just kind of get them off to the side. The other way to approach that would be like you talk about, calling ahead, checking the menu before you go, and then maybe calling ahead and talking to them. So there are definitely a lot of ways to make eating out. And the fact that you're struggling with it, but not running away from it, really gives me a lot of hope, because I do find a lot of people don't want to even go there. They don't want to go out to dinner. They just avoid it. And then they isolate themselves. And that is not positive either, because one of the things we know about, eating a restrictive diet and healing with autoimmunity, if you're on AIP or something else, is that connection with others is really important. And let's face it, we connect over food. And if you can't eat the same food as them, you can still connect with them. So I challenge anybody, Shelly, anybody else listening to this, to overcome those hurdles. And so you can have that connection with other people. Okay. The next question is actually a series of questions, and it comes from Kristen. And this is, all of Kristen's questions have to do with bowel surgery. So again, I want to remind Kristen and anybody else seeing this about that disclaimer, that this is not medical advice, that I am not able to give her personalized guidance. I don't know what kind of bowel surgery Kristen's having. I don't know her health history. So I'm going to speak about this in general terms and make sure that Kristen and anybody else having surgery knows that, you know, you need to be doing all of these things in conjunction with your surgeon and your care team after the surgery. But I can tell you that I have had experience with bowel surgery. So I know some of this myself personally. I was not eating a very good diet at the time I had bowel surgery. So first of all, I'll say that it was not AIP. It was actually very much a processed food diet, not very supportive of my health. So I would do it very differently now. But I can tell you that when you're in the hospital after bowel surgery, they'll first have you start a liquid diet. Clear liquids will be the first thing that you'll be asked to consume. And so broth fits in there. The broth that they give you in the hospital will not be like super high quality bone broth, but you know, it's not the worst thing in the world. I'm kind of, you know, not necessarily that uptight about that. I just realized I'm wearing these glasses so I can read, but now you can't hardly see my face because it's reflecting. So I apologize for that. The bone broth would be fantastic for you to have. So if you can get bone broth in at the hospital, either stuff you've made ahead of time and have family and friends bring in, or some frozen store-bought bone broth, that would be great. I think that's probably everybody sort of probably knows that by now, that broth is going to be a good thing. Then they'll have you move to full liquids. And in my experience, at least, you know, when I had surgery about 10 years ago, was that full liquids included some dairy. So one of the things that I suggest to anybody who's either doing AIP or knows that they, you know, would benefit from AIP, make it really clear to the hospital before the surgery that you don't want to eat dairy. You know, tell them whatever you need to tell them. Don't lie. Don't say you have an allergy. But say that you are avoiding dairy. You feel better when you don't eat dairy, or you're avoiding it because you think it causes problems for you. And they should respect that and then not give you dairy when it comes time to take you into full liquids. So that's one thing to just be mindful of, you know, if that's something that is part of your plan. So the foods that I would suggest once you are ready to start eating more food would be pureed soups. Then when you are maybe heading home and you're ready to really start eating more and more, you're going to need some protein, because protein is building blocks for healing. And so the protein that's the easiest to digest actually is fish. So thinking about salmon, any kind of fatty fish would be really helpful. Something that just feels kind of soothing. So making like a fish chowder could be really, really helpful for healing, giving you all the nutrition that you need, being easy to digest, easy to assimilate into your body. Adding in some easy, pureed, well-cooked vegetables. I start with things like, winter squash, like a butternut squash soup would be really good. Doing some, if you want to add something sweet, some applesauce in small amounts is good. Again, it's cooked, it's been pureed, it's going to be easy. There's some fiber in it, but so you probably start to need some fiber once you've been cleared for that. So that's okay, but it's in a form that your body should be able to handle. Foods that you should avoid, again, I have to defer to not knowing exactly what your medical needs are, where your surgery was, all of those things. But in general, you're going to want to stick with cooked things. Stay away from the raw stuff until you're really ready to, expand your diet there. But if your recovery is going well, you'll be able to advance your diet pretty quickly. So I don't like to give a lot of must avoid things, because it depends on how the recovery goes. If there's anything you should avoid, it just would be processed crappy food. We want to stick to our healthy food diet, real food diet. That leads into the last question Kristen asked about high calorie food tips when you need to gain weight after surgery. And I've been there. Trust me, I know that one. One of the things that I was pushed to consume after my surgery and when my weight was really low were like those meal replacement shakes, like Ensure and things like that. And that was just awful for me. I felt miserable. I know now why. At the time I didn't. I thought, what's wrong with me? Why can't I consume this stuff? But that's something I would suggest you try to stay away from. Honestly, my number one tip for gaining weight after surgery is to try to just let yourself heal. Eat as much as you feel comfortable eating, but give yourself time and trust your body that it will be able to heal first. This is true for all of us whenever we're looking at weight and wanting to either gain or to lose weight, that sometimes what has to come first is simply taking care of ourselves and getting a base level of health improved. So my number one tip, honestly, for what to do to gain weight when recovering from surgery or at any point when you need to gain weight is to just focus on the foundations of good health. So getting all the rest you can, taking as much time off from work as you are able to so that you can really fully recover from surgery, keeping yourself occupied with things that you enjoy. So whether that's, whatever it is that you like, whether that's watching, a whole backlog of movies that you love, or having friends come and visit and cheer you up, or reading books, or, starting to get outside and move around a little bit, doing the exercise they tell you to do, and taking advantage of this time to care for yourself. And then eating the best possible food you can. There are some things that I can suggest, adding in. You can add in some extra fat, like MCT oil actually could be really helpful. It's interesting because we tend to hear about MCT oil a lot in terms of people in the keto sphere wanting to lose weight, but it's actually helpful when you're trying to gain weight too, because it's easily assimilated. Our body doesn't need to produce bile in order to digest it. So it can be helpful when you've had bowel surgery. That's one. And then another is to make sure that you're getting enough carbohydrates. Honestly, it's something that can be actually a challenge when you're eating a real food diet and you're staying away from a lot of sugar, which you want to continue to do. We don't want heavy doses of sugar, but we do want complex carbohydrates. So even though I work with a lot of people who are on AIP, if they're having bowel surgery, if they're having a bowel flare, an IBD flare, we might work with them. I might work with them to have them add well-cooked white rice earlier than you'd think otherwise, because again, it provides some calories. It's empty calories, but when you just really need that energy and you need those building blocks to gain some weight back, that can be really helpful. So I hope that helps, Kristen. Again, I have to be careful about anything I say here and make sure that it's not coming across as me giving you, personal advice, because I don't really know your whole story. But hopefully this gives you a few ideas, and, maybe you can get back to me and let me know how it goes, because I'm always really curious to hear how people do with surgery and preparing for surgery and support afterwards. Okay. I'm checking the time. All right, good. It's only about 3:20, so I've got 10 more minutes, and I've got like 3 more questions. But time flies. We'll just see how many we get through. So if I don't get to your question, I will get to it next week. So the next question comes from Stacy, and Stacy asked if I had any advice for someone suffering from severe GERD, and she also added that she has Crohn's and she has Hashimotos. So for anybody who doesn't know what all those things mean, I'm sure Stacy does, but anybody else who's watching this, GERD, G-E-R-D, stands for gastroesophageal reflux disease. So this is like very severe heartburn, but to the point where it's causing erosions in the esophagus. So it's not just a annoyance, this is like actually something that needs to be treated. So my first advice is follow your doctor's advice and make sure that they're following you and that whatever they're saying you need to do to treat it, not just manage symptoms, but to treat it is being done if some treatment is needed. And then Stacy says she also has Crohn's disease and Hashimoto's. Hashimoto's is a thyroid disease. Crohn's disease is a disease of the intestine. So, and these can all be connected. The GERD, I would first ask probably anybody who has esophageal reflux disease and a Crohn's diagnosis to find out whether or not what their doctor really says is going on here. Is this GERD that you're experiencing actually a manifestation of Crohn's? Because Crohn's disease is not isolated just in the colon. It can be anywhere in the digestive tract. So I would want to make sure that you understand, and your doctor has helped you to like kind of check and make sure that these maybe are all the same thing. And then Hashimoto's refers to, the autoimmune disease that affects the thyroid. So I don't know, Stacy, if Stacy is doing AIP or, how she found me, but the first thing I would say is that AIP has been shown, the autoimmune protocol has been shown to be effective for both of those conditions, Crohn's disease and Hashimoto's. There have been medical studies done, small studies, but studies that proved the efficacy and a small scale of that protocol for both of these conditions. So if Stacy's not doing AIP, has not thought about doing AIP, I would strongly suggest that be the place to start. GERD is a little bit trickier because it's not necessarily going to respond the same way to an autoimmune protocol because there can be a lot of other factors going on. So what I would do if Stacy was my client is that we would be focused on trying to get her into AIP and get, the overall autoimmunity that she's experiencing calmed down, and then look at what's happening in terms of the current treatment or symptom relief medications perhaps that she's taking for GERD. I never want anybody to just stop taking medications ever. I mean, this is not just because it's not appropriate for me to do that, but also because I know that medications of any kind, you need to have some supervision and guidance from a doctor as you are scaling back on them. But if she's currently taking some acid blocking medications, we might be looking at, working with her and her doctor to see about reducing them if they're not helping, and maybe replacing them with something like a natural digestive support. I've had clients who found a lot of success with using something really kind of old-fashioned and gentle, some digestive bitters. There are a couple formulations that are actually AIP compliant or almost AIP compliant. So that's something I work with my clients on helping kind of get them to that point where maybe they don't need to take the medication anymore, but they don't have, they're not quite ready to just be going without anything. And so the bitters helps get them over that gap. So that's something that would be tailored to an individual. Once again, this isn't medical advice. I'm certainly not telling you to go and change your treatment plan, but definitely look into either starting AIP or continuing AIP if you haven't already, and then maybe consider looking at some digestive support for the GERD that is a little different than what your doctor might already be recommending. So Stacy, I hope that helps. Let me see if we have time. Yeah, let's do one more question and then we'll save the others for another day, because I think that will take us right to the 30 minutes. So this is a fantastic question Anthony submitted on AIP. Again, AIP, for anybody who doesn't know, autoimmune protocol. How many servings of vegetables am I supposed to eat per day? I see conflicting advice. And he's absolutely right. There's conflicting advice. So I try to simplify this. I've heard really huge numbers that for somebody like myself and for some of the other people who wrote questions in, and maybe even Anthony, are overwhelming because we have a digestive autoimmune condition. And it's hard to just imagine eating cups and cups and cups and cups and cups of vegetables. All that fiber, all that roughage is not something we're quite ready to do when we first start. So I simplify this and I scale it down a little bit. So ideally, in an ideal world, I would have all of my clients trying to eat a total of 6 cups of vegetables per day. So that sounds like a lot, but when you think about it, if you eat 3 meals a day, that's 2 cups with each meal. And that's really not that much when you figure that all you're really eating are vegetables and meat and fish, protein sources on AIP. We're not filling our plate with grains. We're not eating other, extraneous things. We're not eating, fake foods. We're just eating real food, which ends up being vegetables and, some protein. So it's not that hard actually to do 2 cups at each meal. Now I have people, so that was 6 cups for the day. I have them break that out a little bit to make sure you're getting variety. And this is an easy way to remember it. of those 6 cups, 3 cups should be green vegetables. And it should be ideally a variety of green vegetables. So we don't just want to eat 6 cups of kale every day, day after day. 3 cups, excuse me. So 3 cups of green vegetables and a variety is best. So that might be, throughout the day, throughout the week, you can rotate them in. That would include, green vegetables would include everything like broccoli and collard greens and bok choy and cabbage and spinach and Swiss chard and zucchini, lots of other things. So all the green vegetables, and they can be a mixture of cooked and raw. Is you're measuring that out though to help make this even less daunting. Keep in mind that that measuring cup, we're talking about the raw measure of that. So that helps because when we cook down something like, spinach, 3 cups becomes like 1/4 of a cup. So you can consider that they're packed in pretty tightly, but it still is the raw measurement. So that gives you a ballpark. We don't have to be fanatical about this, but it gives you a ballpark. So 3 cups of greens. And then the other 3 cups of vegetables should be all the colors, all the other colors. So we had green separate because it's so important. And then in the colored cups, the other 3 cups, we want to be seeing orange. We want to be seeing purple and red and some white, all of the colors of the rainbow that we can get in vegetables. So how do we find all of those things? Well, sweet potatoes. So we can have orange sweet potatoes and purple sweet potatoes and white sweet potatoes. We can have winter squash that are going to be like orange and yellow. We can have cauliflower. Cauliflower comes in multiple colors now, not just white, but it also comes in purple and yellow. We can have yellow summer squash in there. We can have radishes. Those are red. All carrots. Carrots are orange. So we can add all of those colors in. So that's the ballpark that I give my clients to shoot for. 3 cups of greens, 3 cups of coloreds, 6 cups all together of vegetables. And again, you see conflicting advice on those because I think people come at it from a different perspective. My perspective is that I personally have experience having, a bowel disease that makes it difficult to eat a lot of vegetables. And I work with a lot of people who do. So I don't go right out and say eat 10, 12, 13, 14 cups of vegetables because I know how much that can hurt somebody. And so I start at a lower number and have them work up because that 6 cups a day might not be feasible for you right away. And it might be that all of them are cooked to start with. And some of them are pureed, and some of them are in smoothies. I definitely don't want people eating only pureed vegetables, but it may be where they have to start for most of it so that they can build up their digestive strength and be able to eat more as they heal. So we have to start where we are. And so it's important to remember that one size doesn't fit all. If you're reading some advice that's kind of geared toward the actual, just general public of AIP people and not specifically for people with digestive concerns, it may not be the relevant advice for them. So that's why you see conflicting advice. So that is the last question I think we'll have time for today. This is the next question, and I am going to answer that one next week. So that will be the first question I tackle next week. I'll make sure that you all get an email with the information when that is posted, and then we'll talk about reintroductions next week. If anybody wants to tune in live, you'll have an option to do that. But if you prefer to watch the recording afterward, that is fine as well. So thanks for submitting your questions, everybody. I really enjoy taking this little bit of time to answer them. I am going to stop the recording now and then make sure that you guys all get a copy of this. So thanks again for joining me.